Hello, hello, welcome to another Beyond All Reason on the fly replay analysis. I'm your host, Zeteo, and today we're going to be looking at Gaudron as they play the fronts on the newest map, Failed Negotiations. Let's get into it. Let's put that, we'll unpause it. We can put it on the player view and ta-da. Oh wait, there we go. Okay, ta-da. Alright, so Gaudron, let's see what you do here. Looks like pretty standard stuff. I don't need to go over. Uh, oh, little thing here. There's a little bit nitpicky, but you can be you can get just one wind turbine before the third max, and then get your wind turbines after, and that'll just give you a tiny boost of metal. Um, Not a huge deal. It just gives you it slightly faster. Usually metal is the like limiting factor, and so any chance you get to get your metal increased in any way is nice. Is good to do. So it looks like you're opening vehicles. In this particular position on this map, hovercraft would be okay as well. It just, if you're gonna do hovercraft, you gotta do more of a aggressive play. You need to like send guys in like this way. Assuming that they're parking their army here. Otherwise, with vehicles, you're just contesting this area along with them. So, it's up to you how you want to play it. But yeah, opening with vehicles, you got some rascals out. Scope it out. Let's see, you are adding on some more winds. This is good. Gotta add that wind on for later. Construction bots going out, assumingly to get some mexes. Commander getting okay. So you get some light defense back here. I suppose that's pretty reasonable. I'd say usually you want your tower like more in this kind of area, but since your commander's going this way and your units coming out of the factory here, that kind of does make sense. So I don't mind that. Or in a way, you could actually park the tower over here. Actually, let's see if you can build that there. Yeah, so you can build it over here, and that would just cover this entire ramp here. Let's see, rascals are just going out, doing some scouting. Yeah, I'd say usually you want to prioritize scouting the guy that you're facing, but getting information for your team, doing some damage from like a weird angle to some of these guys back here is quite nice too. So nice, get some damage here. Hide behind those wind turbines. Unfortunately, the ticks pick you off, but yeah, you got a nice. I mean, actually, you took a bad trade because apparently those two rascals were inefficient. You lost minus 44 metal in that exchange. I have a widget that shows all that for me, so it's quite nice to have. But yeah, you're just sending your commander out, grabbing some stuff. I'll say right here, it's kind of nice to have a radar or something to spot here. Just any additional information to, make this radar line go up further would be nice. Let's see if I even lined that up that well. Yeah, okay, so it'd be around there. Obviously, somebody has a radar over here, right? Or no, you put one over here. Okay, that makes sense. I suppose for me, I like to put them on the hills because then you can see over stuff a little bit easier. And just spotting in this kind of region, or yeah, like this region here is kind of nice. I don't know why I did the label thing. Why does it keep doing that? I'm holding down Q. There we go. But yeah, being able to spot in this area, for you specifically, it's nice because, seeing incoming hovercraft or something like that is going to be quite useful here. But yeah, I see that you're adding on some more mexes. You're adding on, where you were adding on some wind. Your constructors are out and about doing stuff. Say you might, well, I mean, it's okay. So usually you want a constructor back here doing things like making winds to help you for spending your metal. Even more importantly, you want to assist the lab here because the lab only has 100 build power and a construction vehicle has another 90. So even just having one assistant effectively makes units come out of the lab twice as fast, or nearly twice as fast, I should say. Being 190 instead of 100 build power total. And eventually, if you get enough metal, you can add like a second guy on there and stuff like that. But yeah, Okay, so here your energy has decreased significantly. So anytime that this happens, anytime that your energy runs low, you should want to remedy that ASAP. So here, again, ideally you'd have a constructor in the base that you could use to, like if he was assisting the lab and the wind dips down like it has, um, and they can't really assist the lab anymore because you don't have enough energy to assist it with, you could use that same constructor to add on like, say like 4 more winds and then go back to assisting the lab or something like that. And that way you can fix your energy needs and then get them back to assisting the lab ASAP. And that way you'll just get units out a lot faster. But let's see, you're adding on some X's. Okay, you decide to reclaim some trees. I mean, it's a reasonable thing considering wind can just go right back up. Let's see, is this an exploiter? Okay, so you get some exploiters on the fronts here. Yeah, I suppose that's a reasonable spot for it. Um, I'm just thinking like with so few mexes, usually I would just go for a regular one. Um, and yeah, going back to the wind thing, you could put down a couple solars instead. That's another option. Commander getting some kills here. Because yeah, when wind speed minimum is only 2, it makes sense to have like a solar or 2 solars or something like that. Um, or if you're trying to do just wind, like you just need to add on a lot of winds. And anytime you excess, add on a converter basically. Um, either add on a converter or get a storage, and the storage will help minimize the win risk because you'll just have it stockpiled for when you actually need it. But yeah, it's good to have like one converter, for excess. Um, especially when it's wind. If it's solar, you don't want converters though. Just because it takes a lot of metal to make solar, and if you're making solar just for converters, like it just takes a long time for it to actually benefit. And by then it's like you're spending all your metal on solar, and then it's like you just don't have enough units out. Here, this warden, I mean, it's okay to have a warden here. I wouldn't say it's ideal though. I would actually go with twin guards here. So twin guards will outrange any bots. And when it comes to vehicle, the only thing that outranges it is the artillery, but the artillery outranges the warden as it is anyways. So, to me it's a big expenditure. It's like 500 metal for this thing. And it basically does the same amount of damage as twin guard. Or, I mean it does more, but for the cost it's not as efficient on damage. So it's kind of nice to just have like a bunch of twin guards instead of 1 warden. Or 2 wardens, because that's just a lot of metal. And any kind of like big push a warden can't deal with. It's more about the range. Okay, so you got another bot out here. You're getting some constructor stuff. I'm glad that you're queuing stuff up, but I would say on this map, do not get advanced solars. So I'll break this down for you a little bit. So, if you hover your mouse over the wind thing, and you probably know this already, but it says and this is all in terms of metal, but it says it's better to build solar collectors when wind speed is below 5 for Armada and 6 for Cortex. So that means if average wind speed is above those numbers, then it's better to just build wind than solar, and that's in terms of only metal cost. A solar will build a lot faster than the equivalent wind in a lot of cases. To put that into perspective for advanced solar, the numbers for that for Armada are 7.5, and for Cortex it's 9.1. Here the average wind speed is 12.7, so it is going to be better to do wind. And in fact at 12, it's basically equivalent to a fusion. So just to put that all into perspective, like advanced solars are more efficient than basic solars, but they're still rather inefficient. So I'd rather these be wind turbines. Let's see, that's the warden firing. Okay, so you got some solars as backup here. Again, it's okay to have a couple, but if you start building a lot, then all of a sudden you're just using a lot of metal on getting energy. Um, and notes that when wind speed says 17, or in this case the current wind speed is 6.5, that's how much each wind turbine produces per second at that time. So compared to solar is 20, so obviously 6.5 is less. But if you consider the cost, of a solar, the solar is 150 metal, and wind turbines are 45 for Cortex. They're much cheaper for Armada, by the way, but that's a whole nother thing. Um, but yeah, on this kind of map where the average wind speed is quite high, I would recommend just having like queuing up like something like this. And it's nice to have them spaced out, by the way. You space them out with by holding Alt and hitting Z to add space, and hitting X to decrease space. So if you have them like this, and they're all like touching each other, and a couple die, like they'll chain together pretty easily and take out the entire wind farm. So it's nice to have a spacing between it to prevent that a bit more. Another option is to just do like columns or rows of 2. Like don't do 3, do 2. Or you go this way, and then they won't chain as much either. Just as another option. The only downside of that compared to spacing it out more is that one bomber can like make a whole line down the wind farms and blow up a lot of them. Whereas with a bit of spacing, it's much harder for bombers to do that kind of thing. So I prefer the spacing personally. Let's see. The other thing to talk about here is these converters. It's not efficient to convert solar energy. Even when it's advanced, it just takes so long for it to pay off. Actually, let me break that down even further. So advanced solar collector for Cortex is 370 metal. And they provide 75 energy. It takes 70 energy to produce 1 metal per converter per second. So that's basically a 1-to-1 ratio. So what this basically means is it takes 370 seconds to pay for the solar collector if you're converting it. And it's not until after that time that you actually start benefiting from having the converter. So if you're going to do converters with solar, I recommend only getting it for little bits of excess that you have. Like I would say at most 2, maybe 1. With wind, it's a different story. It's much more efficient to convert wind, but it still takes a while for it to pay off in a lot of cases. So it's not ideal to have like a huge conversion farm with a huge wind farm either. In a lot of cases, in some cases it is, and it really depends on the situation of like how long you're trying to hold out in this spot. How long is it going to be until it pays off? In a lot of cases, you can buy T2 or get a T2 from somebody and just get a fusion anyways, so it's kind of better to just go that route if you can. But yeah, enough talk about all that. Let's continue on here. So it looks like you're going with lashers and artillery here. You got a couple medium tanks to safeguard these lashers and artillery. That's nice. I should talk about this too a little bit more. So with the wardens are a big cost, and getting these I think it's the agitator for Cortex, right? For the artillery. Yeah, agitator. So these are high cost defenses, and I don't recommend having them because basically every defense that you have means you'll have less units, and when you have less units, you can't do much about this. You can't attack because they'll just have more stuff. Which basically, like if you run into a really good player, and this player is a 29, they're not bad. They might realize that you put so much money into these defenses, and just say like, okay, I'm just gonna go and grab economy. I'm not gonna, like, why am I gonna fight there? There's so many defenses. And knowing that you don't have push potential because you have too few units. So this is just a lot of metal going into defenses here. Especially the agitators. The agitators are over 1,000 metal each. So having 2 of these is almost a T2 lab. A T2 lab for Cortex vehicle is 2,800. So that's basically there already. It's just 200 short from a T2 lab. And again, it's always going to be more efficient to get to buy a T2 bot when you can. And I notice here that Red actually already has a T2 plant. So it's very common for players to look around, see if anybody has T2, or communicate. You could just like ask, does anybody have T2, or can I buy T2? And look around to see who has a lab and provide them with money to pay for the construction bot. And that's important to do because the main thing you want to do with the construction bot is upgrade your mexes. So upgraded mexes, they cost a lot more metal, but they provide 4 times more metal per second. So that is huge. That is like the #1 thing you want to do with T2 when you can, is upgrade the mexes. So having that bot early means you don't have to pay for the lab. You can just upgrade the mexes with that bot's T2 constructor. And then after that's done, and after you have enough energy, and when I say enough energy for T2, you need like a huge wind farm, like something like 2 blocks like this would be like ideal. Or if you have a smaller block kind of going, and you just don't have a ton of energy coming in, you could get, like say upgrade these 3 mexes, and then build a fusion, and that'll just get you the metal and the energy to actually pay for T2 properly. And then after you build the fusion, you can like upgrade the rest of your mexes, or if you have a lot of wind already, you can just upgrade the mexes. All the other mexes, I should say. But yeah, that's a very, very common way to do it. But yeah, I would prefer that all this, or most of this, turned into units instead of this, or turned into economy if you felt like you couldn't push. Again, like it works both ways. So like, if they had a lot of pork here, you could be the one that produces economy instead. Or if you feel like you can push the position, you can put it all into units and push with the units. Looking at this right now, I mean, first I would say maybe make a radar down here so you can see further, because it's really hard to know what's actually here beyond this line. This is where the radar ends. So you don't even know what you're really pushing into here. So that makes it kind of dangerous to do in a way. So yeah, definitely radar in a way you want to have as your best friend. But so far here on the front, like you're doing a reasonable job here. I'm not worried about that. But yeah, without, oh, okay, so you actually don't build the agitators. But either way, without these wardens, if you had enough build power at your base, you could potentially produce a lot more units to push really hard. Yeah, given your metal income, I would actually have maybe a second construction turret here. And you're spending a lot of that metal actually on, these advanced solar collectors. So, and also notes, advanced solar collectors cost a ton of energy. I wish I saw this when you started building it. I wish I paid more attention, I guess. But basically, before you get an advanced solar collector, you want to have enough energy income to actually build it. Otherwise, it's kind of like you're just kind of what's it called? You're stalling on energy, and so it gets built slowly, and then your units come out slowly as well. So I'd recommend more wind turbines before this, or if the wind was like awful, here the wind is good, but say the map had awful wind, you could go with some basic solars first before that. Usually something around like 7 or 8 at least for solar collectors. Usually more because you're trying to produce units at the same time. Before thinking about an advanced solar collector. One of the other ways you can do, or one of the other things you can do to buy it, is get a storage. If you get a storage and your energy bar is high, that storage provides 6,000 energy storage. So, 6,000 plus, like, say you had 2,000, storage otherwise, that's 8,000 storage, and the advanced costs 4,000. So the storage would help you get there, as well as paying for, you know, the units that are coming out and stuff like that. So storage would help a lot before getting these. Oh, so you are building the agitator. Okay, so you rearrange where you put it. Yeah. Yeah, I already talked about all that. And unfortunately, a lot of your metal's going into those solars. Yeah, so on a map like this, like, it's okay to get solars, like, when you are in trouble with wind. But ideally, what you want to do is keep building the winds and then reclaim the solar. Like, use them as a temporary thing. And with winds, you know, because wind can dip down a lot, storage is good for that reason as well. You know, so storage is actually a good thing to have. But yeah, again, this is just not great. But any chance you get to like get that metal back, you know, it's going to help you just field more units. And again, you're also producing, or you're also making this, so that's a lot of your metal as well. And then this is a lot, and that's a lot, and that's a lot. And you could just potentially have a lot more units. My apologies if I'm repeating myself a little bit. I'm trying to just hammer that in a bit because that's a very important concept for bar. Just to note that, you know, you want to spend your resources where they're going to be efficient, basically. Let's see, so this is definitely T2 out here. This looks like probably Sheldon's. So yeah, once you start seeing T2 that has range like that, it's going to be harder to push. But potentially, so if a player is building out of a T2 lab this early on, it's going to be much harder for them to have a lot of units. You know, so they'll have like, you know, I think this is probably like 4 Sheldons. And that's probably all they have. I don't know what this is. This is probably a tower or something. But yeah, it's not a lot. So actually, you know, I would say given this, you can't really assault that. Like Whistlers and Artillery are going to be awful against things like Sheldons. You know, but if you had some more medium tanks and things like that, you could actually like just drive into their base. You could probably drive all the way over here. Unless somebody else helped out, which is probably, you know, that's usually the case. So, you know, you can't expect to get in the base, but like you could actually push them back really far, essentially, if you know, if a lot of that metal that was spent here went into more medium tanks. So Lashers and Artillery are great against the, you know, like bots, and they're great against you know, vehicles in this kind of position because the vehicles have to go down to the water and then they, you know, have to go up the hill to get to you. So like, you know, it's all good that you're defending this spot. It's, you know, those are units that are going to be good in that kind of situation. But they take a while to push, you know, and once T2 comes out, you know, stuff that starts outranging this stuff, then all of a sudden they become much less useful. So yeah, I guess I would maybe, I mean, not that you would have known that, but since you're in this situation, you could reclaim some of these guys. You know, reclaim your artillery, reclaim your lashers, especially, because they're not going to help you much at all here, and they're just going to die basically. Now, obviously, having something for them to chew on is kind of nice for a minute. You know, if you're trying to get some other units out. Okay, so you got a T2 lab. Did you buy it? Okay, so it looks like they just shared it with you, which is great. You just get a free T2. Yeah, it's a little bit better to buy it if you can, but yeah, it's also nice to be given it if you really need it. The reason why you'd want to buy it is because every time they give it to you, that's money that they don't have now. And they're kind of setting themselves behind for it. Yeah, so it was this player. Yeah, they're pre-fusion, or okay, they're getting an advanced geo here. So yeah, I guess it wasn't too bad. Yeah, usually it's like if you're gonna give them out, you want to have a fusion and, or actually you don't really need the fusion. You just need the, you know, like at least 3 mexes upgraded. before doing it, because you want to spend your metal on getting more metal before you start spending metal on other people. It's just a little bit more efficient that way. Let's see, do you have a radar? Does that cover that? Okay, so they must have a jammer here. So yeah, it's a bit unfortunate. You know, Sheldons do pretty well at hitting. You know, their weapon fires pretty quickly. So there's not really too much you can do unless you just have a lot of medium tanks to run through there. But at this point, there's probably enough Sheldons that, you know, it's going to be really difficult to actually push that. Yeah. Unfortunately, you're sitting a little idle here. I'd say, yeah, once you have your mechs is upgraded, and in this case I'd want a fusion, but again, like I was saying before, you could have a bunch of wind instead. I would suggest getting a T2 lab, because a lot of these T1 units are not going to be efficient. What I was talking about before with attacking and being aggressive is you just have way more and overwhelm him with medium tanks. Or, I mean, I guess you could overwhelm them with things like incisors or something too, but it usually doesn't pan out as well because they just die so quickly. But yeah, this is definitely enough Sheldons that it's going to be really difficult. I like the fact that you're using manual fire here, so that's good. Looks like there's an agitator or something up here as well. Oh, you got something. Yeah, any chance you get to move where they're actually attacking is kind of nice. Because if they're all attacking one spot for a while, they're just gonna, yeah. I think you know that, you're just busy. Yeah, at this point I would probably reclaim the Wardens. I would definitely reclaim these. But the Wardens, like, they're gonna be outranged by the Sheldons anyways. So it's kind of like they're not gonna do much. See, no lab yet. Okay, so you're going to upgrade your mechs. I'd say especially when if you're in this position where you have some of the extractors upgraded here, and your metal is this high, I would definitely, well, okay, so I guess first of all you would need more energy than this, but you could put down a T2 lab pretty soon here before going out here to upgrade these mexes. And so what you can do is just start the lab with your builder and then go to upgrade. And then your construction turrets and stuff, you could tell them to build the lab instead. And that way you can spend some of that metal. It's good that you're adding on some construction turrets here because your metal is quite high. But yeah, usually if you do it really efficiently, your metal will be quite low when you do that. And you can eat the T1 lab, and they'll just give you a boost of energy or a boost of metal to put into that lab to afford some units out of there. Because yeah, very soon there's going to be too many Sheldons here for you to defend this area. Yeah, that's a lot of lashers and artillery. Lots of pinging going on. Oh, torpedo bombers. Yeah, seeing all your stuff get blown up by T2. So in bar, you know, T2 is like significantly stronger than T1, but it is significantly more expensive. So it's kind of like trying to afford it is tricky. Trying to afford it, not die, I should say. That is one of the main things to work on for learning bar. One of the core concepts to learn. Alright, so we got that mech's upgraded. So yeah, so now you're running into energy issues, even on T1. You have the build power to actually produce out of here quite quickly, so that's good. Um, but yeah, you know, even on T1, your energy does dip down a little bit here. Yeah, hopefully a fusion soon. Oh, little inefficiency here by accident, probably. Obviously, upgrading this one would be a little bit faster than that one. Ooh, that's a nuke. Goodbye, red. It's unfortunate they didn't have anti-nuke quite yet. That's probably that might have decided the game right there. Not sure. Obviously, I haven't seen. You know, I haven't watched through this game yet. Let's see. I'm gonna speed up a little bit. Yeah. So now arbiters are taking out your agitators here. So yeah, you're just kind of losing metal on that at this point. Yeah, this is what arbiters are designed for, is taking this kind of stuff out. So that's a lot of lost metal there. Yeah, so you get the anti-nuke. Makes sense. I would maybe position it more like over here. Firstly, because it's by your build power, and that'll just help it build faster. But secondly, that'll just put it in a zone where it'll help red out a bit more. Since they just got destroyed, it'd be nice for them to have some more coverage. You know, so when you try to place an anti-nuke, I would try to put it where it helps the most people. You know, which would, I think this is a reasonable spot here, because you know, although that leaves your, you know, like right now your coverage is here, and that means this entire zone over here, this beach is, you know, protected, whereas over here would not. But you know, protecting red is a little bit more important than these, you know, this outside area. Yeah, your red player is doing a lot of the work up here on the fronts. So it's pretty important that they are building properly. I mean, they're getting a fusion, so I mean, they're going to be okay, I think. They got so much money, they should be getting build power. Anyways, back to you. You have fusion yet? No. Nope, just walls. Walls for the anti-nuke. Yeah, by the way, so one of the main things that people will do to destroy an anti-nuke, I mean, walls are nice, and this will you know, stop any quick units from running in and just destroying it really quick. But what I would say is maybe, you know, put the wall a little bit further out, because there's basically, you know, spy bots, which are built out of the bot labs for both Armada and Cortex, have an EMP on death, or not on death, but on self-destruct. And so one of the common things to do is to walk a spy bots up to an anti-nuke, disable it with the EMP, and then nuke that player. So I guess to me it'd be a little bit better if the walls were like out here a little bit more, because the radius, you know, like a spy bot here would you know, like has a range of like around there. So just food for thought. It's not terribly common, but something I thought I'd point out, seeing that. Commander kill. Okay, I don't know why they sacrificed the commander there, but it's a good kill. Mammoth, was that your mammoth? No, you couldn't have built a mammoth. That's unfortunate. The mammoths are so tanky. It's unfortunate it was just like kind of lost there. It's so expensive too. Lots of stuff going on. Good fighter screen. But yeah, here definitely this is way too long to be on T1, because they're just gonna basically get destroyed for nothing. I'm glad you're building a fusion now. You know, so to talk about this a little bit, I believe you're placing your fusion here because, you know, a lot of time people will do like you know, do a fusion like, you know, where it is, and then they'll do like a block of construction turrets, and then they'll have like converters either by the fusion or on the other side, and then they'll put like a lab, you know, on the other side of that, or on the tip of that. Um, and that's, you know, for late game economy, that's quite good. However, if you're building your first fusion, I would recommend building the first one over here, and waiting to build like an APHIS out here. And actually, I would actually say build a fusion here and then get your converters for it, and build your APHIS over here as well, and then start something like that. Because the first APHIS and the first fusion are big milestones in getting energy. And with them, you know, they provide so much that it's like, well, having a converter with it is nice. Now for Cortex, the fusion provides a little bit more energy, and so oftentimes people will get 2 T2 converters with it. And that really depends on how much energy you actually need. You know, for my first fusion, I like to just get 1 so that I have some energy, or some extra energy for units. You know, and then what was I saying? Oh, and then for APHIS, it's 4 to, you know, basically people generally get 4 converters to 1 APHIS. You know, what is it? It would be 6 normally, or no, it'd be 5. Yeah, so right, five converters normally if you want to convert all the energy from the advanced fusion. But in most cases you want some energy to work with as well, so it's usually 4. But yeah, it depends on what you're building as well, because some units cost more energy than others. So it really depends. Same thing with the T2 lab. I would station, or I would place the T2 lab by your build power. It doesn't need to be like hugging it or anything. You know, these things have some range. You know, so you could put your, you know, if you plan to head a little bit more, you could put your T2 lab like down here or something. And then that way it's in range of the converters. You could actually put your fusion like over here, and that way there's less chance of it blowing up the lab and stuff like that. You know, and then your converters would be like out here. Converters build a lot faster, so you could put those like out here, because they do explode and deal a lot of damage. But yeah, just know that anytime you build away from your build power, it's going to take longer to build it. But yeah, as it is, since you're also producing units, it's going to take a long time anyways, and you're spending all your metal. So if this was the thing that you really needed to do, I'd say this is fine, because you're slow building this to increase your economy while getting the units that you need. But yeah, in most cases, and especially here, you know, this is a T1 lab, so you know, you're just spending metal on units that are just going to die, essentially. I mean, in a way, they're kind of holding the fronts and, you know, soaking up damage so that the opponent can't just run you over. But I guess in my opinion, it's better to just stop unit production in this case. Yeah, it's like you have enough here to soak damage, and if you just stop unit production and, you know, reclaim the lab, you could get this fusion a lot faster and then put down your T2 a lot faster. Yeah, hope that all that makes sense. I know I kind of like maybe go into too much detail, but I just want to make sure that that's you know, you understand what I mean, because this is pretty important stuff right there. Hey, push in here, you kill the arbiters. That's nice. That was value for sure. I think it was like 4,000 right before you started losing guys. Yeah, so you make it out of there, and you know, this is a positive 2,600. You know, and that number just means you killed that much more metal than you lost. If it was a negative number, it'd be the opposite of, you know, meaning that you lost more. Yeah, so this is unfortunate. You know, since Red got nukes, you know, he wasn't able to hold the fronts anymore, and now you're just kind of surrounded. You know, at your particular OS, I wouldn't really worry about, you know, having to hold both locations. But I guess just to know some tactics here, you know, anytime you, Like, anytime you and your, the person in your position makes a play to run forward to take stuff out, and maybe it's a, in terms of just you and them, it's a good idea. But the the enemy could see, oh, you just lost all these units here, which means you don't have much here. And while the green player was just took damage, they don't have a lot of attack potential. But teal and friends over here, I guess dark green, they have the potential to push into you then, or push into red. You know, they could. Let me clear some of this out. Um, so they could take their units that are stationed here and push this way. Say red was still alive, he could be stationed here, and it'd be red's job to kind of like, maneuver in a way to protect you. That's part of the team aspect. But in this case, since red was nuked and they know that, they have all this potential to push straight into red. And in this case, they're also swinging around to you to do the damage, and there's just nothing there to prevent it. Now, granted, yellow is stationed in a very, very defensive position, in a way that they're only defending themselves, and it'd be more ideal for them to have some more things out here, or be stationed a little bit more further northward, I guess. Um, and then of course, as soon as they see an attack coming up here, they should be responding. Whoops. They should be responding by going this way to meet it, and this way to meet it. Which, if the enemy just has a solid group of units, this would basically pinch it, or surround it, so that they can't retreat. Then they just take heavy losses. Yeah, little bit on tactics there for you. Um, yeah. So yeah, unfortunately, you take heavy damage. You're basically dead. Red's still basically dead, and yeah, the game's basically over at this point. Yeah, and given that situation, I don't know if there's really any more for me to really talk about, since you're basically dead. So I guess I'll end here and start summarizing. And I'll just summarize very briefly, because I talked pretty in depth during the match. So yeah, firstly, I don't suggest advanced solars, especially if you're going to try to convert it on this map, because wind is just so good. Again, the numbers for that stuff is like, wind is better to have when average wind speed is above what was it? 7.5 for Armada and 9.1 for Cortex. Here it's 12.7, which technically makes it better than a fusion. So having a big wind farm is good. And you don't want to convert energy unless it is wind powered for T1. For T2, you basically always want a converter for fusion, but it really depends on if how much you need that energy and how much excess you have. Aphises are generally 4-1, but it could be 3-1, it could be 5-1. It just depends on how much energy you have elsewhere and stuff like that. I feel like there was a bit too much pork here. There was a lot of expense. These agitators, you had 3 of them. That's 100, or that's 1,300 each, and then you have to consider the wardens were another 500. And that's a lot of metal that could have been put into units to either, or that's a lot of metal to be spent elsewhere. It could either be put into units and assault this location. And if you're going to do that, I would recommend doing much more medium tanks and much less lashers. Artillery can be somewhat useful there if they have a lot of static defenses. But mostly medium tanks is what I'm getting at. Lashers are good for, if the enemy, they're like good at keeping the enemy back, assuming that your lashes are protected well enough. They can just, deal some nice damage without your opponent being able to really do much back. But otherwise, I would say they're not great, and they're especially not great against T2. So when you start seeing T2 from your enemy, you want to try to match that in most cases. Or if it's early enough on and you have enough medium tanks, you can just run through. Um, when you get a T2 from an ally, I would suggest grabbing these mexes ASAP, and you did that. But after that, given that your energy situation was a little bit low, I would go for a fusion next, and I would place that fusion by your build power that exists so that you can build it quickly. And when you do all that, you can eat the lab, if you're not producing units. So feel free to do that if you need metal. And you want to eat your solar collectors after you have your fusion and stuff, especially. Ideally, even before that, like if you build up enough wind before that, you can eat your solar collectors, because they are just so inefficient for energy. They cost so much metal. Let's see what else. Yeah, I mean a lot of it was just staying way too long on T1 units that ended up just getting picked off by a lot of the Sheldons. Because and also when you consider attacking a position, I forgot to mention this, but you want to consider the hills, like how hilly is it? Because vehicles do not go up hills very quickly, so any hill will slow them down. So in this position, looking at the elevation at the bottom left, elevation is 17 here, and here it's negative 10-ish, I guess. Just looking at like overall. Yeah, by the coast here it's more like 10 positive, and here it's negative 10. So yeah, it's a difference of 20, which is not huge. So medium tanks I think would do okay here. But on some maps, some hills are quite steep. And, I've seen plenty of people, try to barrel through with T1 units. And all the T1 units, although we're really strong initially, a few remaining units back at the base that are just coming out of the lab are able to pick off this whole army of T1 tanks, because the tanks are so slow at going up that hill. So something to consider when you're making assaults like that. Also, radar. You did okay with radar early on. You had one in your base. You eventually put one down here. I feel like this one could have been sooner. I guess just to talk about that a little bit more. Basically, as I push up with my commander or with bots, kind of whatever gets there first. When I get to a new location around a mechs, it could still be in my current radar range, but I want to, I'll put down a radar before anything else, because then I extend that radius and I can see what's coming at me and I can respond to it. So I'll get a radar first, then the mechs, and then maybe a tower, depending on if I feel like I need it. And that way I can just, if I see something on the radar as I'm building my mechs, I can just put down a tower right away. And maybe, if I feel like my commander needs help or something, or whatever it is. Just gives you that little bit of time to respond. Also, hills are quite nice for radar. Actually, I assume you could put a radar here. But yeah, you want to put it at the top of the hill near the edge, and that'll just allow the radar to see more. It won't be blocked by terrain and stuff. Let's see. Yeah, there was plenty of time when you could have bought a T2 constructor, and that would just help you do some of that stuff. If the T2 guy has either a Cortex T2 lab, you could buy a Twitcher, and Twitchers can make fiends, so you don't even need to build a T2 lab to get certain T2 units. For Armada, they have a vehicle helper like that, the console, and the console can build hounds, which is quite nice to have very early on. So, being able to not have to build a lab, hounds are a great addition. I don't really know if anybody had Armada units around, but just something to consider. But yeah, I mean, those are the main points. I hope this helped for you. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. Either in the comments or you can leave it in the thread. I'll look at both. Yeah, hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching.